Normally I wouldn't post an update like this here. I would post it to my main channel. The one just under my name, Noah Nelson. Unfortunately, that is no longer an option. Because as of September 8th at 8:09 a.m., my YouTube channel, my main one, where I did, Miserable Movie Monday, Dubbers, all sorts of stuff, the podcast with Jacob, basically anything that didn't fit the other channels was there. And that channel, as of that date and time, no longer exists. At 8:09 a.m. on Sunday, September 8th, I received the following email from YouTube. Hi, Noah Nelson. We have reviewed your content and found severe or repeated violations of our sex and nudity policy. Because of this, we have removed your channel from YouTube. And then it goes on saying, we know this is probably very upsetting news. It's our job to keep YouTube a safe place. And then a bunch of stuff about, what their policies are, how they find violations, how this affects me, permanently removed my channel, and what you can do next, which is review guidelines, appeal, all that stuff. This happened without warning. I never received any indication that any videos on my channel violated their sex and nudity policy. And I have no idea what video or videos did. I woke up about an hour after this email came in. So I saw it about an hour after it was sent. I immediately submitted an appeal, obviously, saying that I have no idea what video violated your policy, but if you could tell me which video did, I would be willing to remove it, as long as I got my channel back. I also, subsequently, at the suggestion of someone online who I vented about this to, tweeted at Team YouTube to try to get something figured out, try to speed along the process or anything, because when I submitted the appeal, it said, these things can take around 2 business days. They usually take around 2 business days, sometimes takes more. And it's also worth noting, this is not the first time that my channel, my entire channel, has been taken down. A couple years ago, I forget which year it was, but it was, I think, around season 3 of Miserable Movie Monday. I want to say around the time I posted the Miserable Movie Monday for the film Infamous, I got a notification that my entire channel was taken down. Again, no warning. It said it was for copyright violations. I submitted an appeal, and got the channel back in under an hour. I believe it was 30-something minutes. I don't remember the exact number, and I can't look it up now because the channel's gone. But I posted a video about it immediately after I got the channel back, saying, hey, this is fucked up that happened to me. It's unfair that it happened with no warning. I had zero indication that I would be in trouble. And that was when I started being a lot more careful about the content I did on YouTube. Like, for Miserable Movie Monday, after that point, I don't think I did any more live ones for a while. Maybe a couple. And I was very careful about selecting movies for Miserable Movie Monday to make sure that I didn't get into any copyright issues. And then obviously for season 5 with the rewatches and season 6 with new stuff, I edited Miserable Movie Mondays into highlight reels, so that I could expand my options for what films I could watch, while still avoiding any copyright issues that could get my channel taken down. Now, like I said, I had previously gotten my channel taken down for copyright, and that made me a lot more careful about that. Sex and nudity, I had never gotten any indication that any of my videos violated sex and nudity policy before. So this came as an even greater shock to me. And obviously I submitted the appeal, and like I said, I messaged Team YouTube on Twitter. I said, hey, my entire channel just got removed with no warning for sex and nudity policy violations. I have no idea what video that came from. This is the second time I've had my entire channel removed with no warning. Please fix this ASAP. I tweeted a couple times just to really make sure I got my voice out there, that they were hearing me, and I eventually get a response on one of them saying, thanks for reaching out. Looks like your appeal is still under review right now. It's best to wait until you hear back from our policy team via email. Note, a single case of severe abuse, like predatory behavior, spam, or pornography, can lead to a channel termination without warning. I kind of went off a little bit on Twitter. I mentioned it was the second time my channel had been taken down without warning. First time it was resolved in less than an hour because it was an obvious mistake, and I still never found out what video contained the violation. I mean, I was pretty sure it was the infamous viewing, because after that it had gotten blocked worldwide and removed entirely, to the point where not even I could watch it back, but they never explicitly told me that's what it was, so might not have been. I said, if you're able to check the status of appeal, surely you can tell me what video violated your policy. I said, with no prior violations of this kind, surely the better course of action is to take down the video, not to take down the entire channel. And yeah, in direct response to them saying a single case of severe abuse can lead to a channel termination without warning, I respond, yeah, that's what the email said, but I don't even know what video could possibly have been considered such a severe violation. And then radio silence. I did not hear anything else from Team YouTube on Twitter. Jump forward a bit in the day to 8:30 p.m. So almost 12 hours after I submitted my appeal. Again, first time this happened, I submitted an appeal and it got overturned in less than an hour. This took almost 12 hours to resolve. This is the email I received. Hi, Noah Nelson. We have reviewed your appeal for the following, and then it links to my channel, a link that takes you to a page that says this channel was removed because it violated our community guidelines. We reviewed your channel carefully and have confirmed that it violates our sex and nudity policy. We know this is probably disappointing news, but it's our job to make sure that YouTube is a safe place for all. How this affects your channel? We won't be putting your channel back on YouTube. Simple as that. Guys, I did everything I could. And I still don't know. Neither of these emails tell me what video or videos, if it was multiple, which I highly doubt. I can't even think of one that would be severe enough for this course of action. But not once did I get a straight answer as to what video violated their policy. I have been hearing a lot more from bigger content creators that I follow, complaining about YouTube's constantly changing policies and how it is really hampering their channels and making it very hard to continue making the content that should be fine for them to make. Most notably and recently, one of my favorite YouTube channels, Dead Meat, which covers horror movies. Most notably, they have the series called The Kill Count, where they tally up the victims in all their favorite horror movies, and show you how they were made. They have been getting increasing amount of difficulties with making their content. First, it was gore, which, like, a lot, like, basically YouTube cracking down on the amount of gore, on it, basically showing any gore, even if you're covering a horror movie on YouTube, without it getting age restricted, demonetized. So they have since had to censor most gore in kill counts. Another thing that YouTube has really cracked down on is even the mere mention of self-harm or suicide. Even in the context of a horror movie, which, you know, has a lot of that depending on the type of horror movie. Like, if they even mention it, their video will get age restricted. So they have to skirt around that issue, even when it is integral to the story of the film. Which for horror movies, that happens a lot. Another thing they've cracked down recently is particularly sexual situations involving minors, which is completely understandable, except when said characters are being played by grown adults, which Dead Meat has had issue with, particularly a recent film, Lisa Frankenstein, that they did a kill count for. It's worth noting that this film is rated PG-13, and yes, it does involve sexual situations involving teenagers, but all of these teenage characters are played by grown adults. YouTube doesn't care. YouTube doesn't actually care about making the platform a safer place. There's evidence of this with the fucking Star Wars fans that have like actively made threats and harmful content that totally abuses YouTube's guidelines, but they're able to get away with it scot-free somehow. There is plenty of extremely explicit content on YouTube, both in terms of violence and sexuality. Extremely explicit stuff. Not to, you know, make myself look like a, you know, a weird person, but we all have, you know, sexual needs, and before I knew of, you know, good ways to find explicit pornography, I would actively search on YouTube for stuff like that. And obviously most of the stuff you find is not that explicit. It's, you know, people kissing, making out, that sort of thing. But I do remember distinctly in, I want to say, early high school, finding a full 15-minute hardcore pornography video that was on YouTube. Extremely explicit, that I would watch a lot. And I remember that video staying up on YouTube for at least a week, if not more. They don't actually care about keeping the site safe. They act like they do, because if they don't take some action, like, no one will use their platform. They'll lose money. But in their attempts at keeping the site safe, they actively make it harder for people who are trying to make good and interesting content, while completely letting slide plenty of content that is not okay for the platform, that is actively harmful, that is actively explicit, with no regard to sticking to the community guidelines that are constantly changing. And they're just able to get away with it. I don't understand. I don't. It sucks. So where does that leave me? Well, as I have made clear in the past, I am winding down on creating content for YouTube, because it's never made me money. I've never been a big enough channel for that. None of the channels have ever gotten that big to the point where I can make money doing this. And that's not what I want to do with my life. I want to be an actor and a writer. I want to actually do professional work in the theater and film industries. YouTube, especially in the later portions of my time on YouTube, I have seen as just a stepping stone to practice my acting and writing a lot of the time. What that's what No One Else in Productions is for, with, the Sugarloaf Shade and the Death of the Cat in the Hat and other stuff that will be coming there. That's what all the lore has been for, like practicing my storytelling and writing. Dubbers, practicing my acting, improv, comedic abilities. And Miserable Movie Monday, exposing myself to as many bad films as possible to see what I can learn from them and make sure I don't make the same mistakes in my films and plays. So, yeah, I've been very clear about wanting to slow down and eventually stop with YouTube content. This incident has merely accelerated that. Thankfully, most of the series that were on the main channel that is no longer on YouTube, have been properly wrapped up. Miserable Movie Monday has been properly wrapped up, with the exception of one Miserable Movie Oscar ceremony, which we'll get to. Dubbers, at least my run of Dubbers, has been properly wrapped up. It's basically just the podcast and the overarching channel lore and stuff on the Hitmon channel that hasn't been firmly wrapped up. But we are coming to that point, and we're going to come to that point faster. Because it's so demoralizing to make content now, because YouTube actively sucks for content creators. And I don't even get paid for it. I feel so badly for the people who make this their job and what they have to deal with. I am under a lot less stress because this isn't what I do for a living. It really sucks that my channel is gone. But it is what it is. So, unfortunately, most of my content is no longer able to be watched. Unless you're able to access it through the Wayback Machine. I actually tried doing that earlier today. It seemed to not fully load, so I don't know for sure if that's a possibility. If you want to watch some of my content, you certainly can try that. But when I checked, it was only saved up until like December of last year. So any content I've made this year, you wouldn't be able to access from the looks of it, which sucks. But again, it is what it is. So where does that leave the remaining series that I have? Well, obviously, anything ongoing on the Hitmon channel is unaffected by this. The Paper Mario 1000 Year Door playthrough, Infinite Fusion, which I still need to get back to editing, Smasher Day Fight Live, unaffected. Although Smasher Day Fight Live will be wrapping up fairly soon. Ideally, this month, we'll see where Alex is at schedule-wise, if we're able to wrap it up this month. That's my goal. So, like, 2, maybe 3 more streams of that. It kind of depends, because most of the remaining story threads we want to cover are Alex's specifically that he has built up. So I want to give him the proper amount of time to wrap those up in a satisfying way before I do my wrap up for the finale. Yeah, so stuff is wrapping up, but nothing on the Hitmon channel is affected by this, obviously. What is affected is the stuff that was planned, that was ongoing on my main channel or planned to go on my channel. I know I've talked a little bit about the development colon of development colon. That's not affected by this. The plan was always for that to be posted to No One Else in Productions and Heart of Pluto Pictures. So that is nothing to worry about. Stan expressed some concern about that. That's nothing to worry about. Don't worry. The podcast. Obviously, basically the last major ongoing series from the main channel. Thankfully, you can still access all of the episodes because they're on podcast platforms as well. They're not just on YouTube. This also means that you can access some of our improvised dubs. Basically any of the feature-length movie ones that I had to edit into highlight reels due to potential copyright issues. So, like, Mewtwo Strikes Back, The Hobbit, Fanforstic, Sponge Out of Water. I'm sure there's others, but they're not coming to mind right now. But any of those you can still access because they're on the same podcast platforms as the podcast. No Lights, No Camera Action, for those who aren't aware, is a podcast I've been doing with Jacob for the past 5 years. Still can't believe it's been 5 years. But we talk about movies and stuff. And before this situation happened, that was kind of one of those things where, like, I was like, well, this could go on for however long, because there's not really a through line to, like, wrap up, per se. I mean, there's some through lines between episodes, but those change. Obviously, now, with the channel no longer existing, once again, I decided to expedite, essentially, wrap up on stuff. So, the plan for No Lights, No Camera Action, and I've already gone through this with Jacob and Alex, because yes, Alex will be part of this. So, there will be 3 more episodes of the podcast. And they will be... The plan is for them to be live streamed on the Hitmon channel. Because it's the biggest channel I have left. It doesn't really make sense to put them on Heart of Pluto Pictures. And it really doesn't make sense to put them on No One Else in Production. So, they're going to go on the Hitmon channel as live streams. And then go on the podcast platforms with the others after the fact. And so we've figured out exactly what we're going to do for the remaining episodes. The first episode we do is going to be wrapping up the story building, casting, whatnot, for the pirate horror film we've been theoretically making on the channel. We've had a running segment the past couple episodes where we've been developing a pirate-themed horror movie for Blumhouse. Obviously, this isn't a real movie that's happening. It's just it's just a fun, creative exercise we've been doing. So the next episode is we're going to wrap that up. Finish the story. Cast all the characters, come up with a title. Probably pick a director as well that we'd like to see make the film. And then we will also be talking about a film of Jacob's choice and a film of my choice. If you listen to the most recent episode of the podcast, you know that Jacob picked for his next film of choice for us to watch the English dub of the original Godzilla, also known as Godzilla King of the Monsters, which will be interesting. And just to give you guys a little teaser excitement, my film of choice is one that Jacob and I have talked about watching for a little while now. One I explicitly made a video on the main channel that you can't see anymore, obviously, prepping him for, essentially, where I explained the lore of the entire Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. And the reason we did that is because we are going to be watching Freddy vs. Jason. Don't expect a lore explanation video on Friday the 13th. That lore is really not nearly as interesting as the lore of Nightmare on Elm Street. But we will be watching Freddy vs. Jason and talking about that alongside the English dub of the original Godzilla. And so that is going to be the first episode of the final 3 episodes of the podcast. The second, we are going to be doing something I've been wanting to do for a while. We are going to be doing a Big Brother role play season, essentially, with movie characters. This is inspired largely by Dead Meat on their podcast, the Dead Meat Podcast. Every time there's a new season of Survivor, they have done an episode simulating a season of Survivor with horror movie characters. And I'm a big fan of the reality show Big Brother, which is essentially Survivor, but you're in a house. And so Jacob and I will be simulating, role-playing a season of Big Brother with various movie characters. On that episode, we will also talk about another film of Jacob's choice and another film of my choice. Films yet to be determined. Jacob's, I know he has teased to me, is a film that, well, back when we didn't know we were going to be ending the podcast, he teased it as a film that might make me ban him from ever choosing films for us to watch again. So obviously that's going to be one of the last films we watch for the podcast. Figured that'd be fitting. And it was always supposed to be his pick after Godzilla anyway, so it works out. I'm debating between a couple films for my last pick. I'm specifically deciding between a couple films that would have some thematic relevance to the rest of the podcast, that we've either talked about before, talked about specifically wanting to watch, or, stuff like that. So, we'll get that figured out. Watch out for the first episode back for an announcement on that. So that's what the second episode's going to be. The third and final episode we're going to do, live streamed here on the Hitmon channel, is we're bringing Alex back in. We are going to pitch our sequels for Fisher and the Reels. For those who don't listen to the podcast, before we started doing the pirate horror movie thing, we had another running segment where we were developing what we called a Kingdom Hearts killer, which was essentially to compete with Kingdom Hearts, another crossover game that essentially combined the investigation and trials of Ace Attorney with different worlds from Paramount-owned properties. Me, Jacob, and Alex are each developing a story for a sequel, each one based on a continuation of one of the 3 different endings from the first game. And so, final episode, we're all going to pitch those. We are going to reminisce about the podcast as a whole, talk about some of our favorite moments and whatnot. And then we are going to talk about a film of Alex's choice. I thought it'd be fun to let him have the final say in what we talk about on the podcast, since he has never been a regular member of the podcast, but he's essentially been. He is a recurring guest star on the podcast. He has been in previous reminiscing episodes, like for the anniversaries. He's also, I believe, been in every single April Fool's Day episode we've ever done. Because we always come up with these really fun ideas for April Fool's episodes, and we have to get Alex in. It's tradition at this point. So, we're bringing him back in for the final episode. He gets to choose a film for once, because he's technically never gotten to choose a film we watched for the podcast. And then lastly, for that final episode, I will also be reading a paper I wrote in college about the film Vampire's Kiss. This is an actual paper I wrote for one of my college classes about one of the memeiest Nicolas Cage movies, and also one of the greatest films ever made, that we previously talked about on the podcast. Back when we were doing the Film Alphabet Challenge, we did that for V, and it became one of me and Jacob's favorite films we ever watched for the podcast. So much so that I ended up writing a paper on it in college, and I've been promising to read it at some point ever since I wrote it, and might as well end the podcast that way. So that's all we're going to be doing in the 3rd episode of the podcast. So that wraps that up. As for the Pinocchio video, because this is one of the highest effort videos I have ever done for YouTube that isn't an actual short film, I think I'm actually going to post it on Noah Nelson Productions. It doesn't really fit with the Hitmon channel, because Hitmon channel is mostly gaming stuff. I know I'm doing the podcast episodes there, but it really doesn't make sense to do those anywhere else. And Heart of Pluto Pictures doesn't make sense, so I'm going to post that on Noah Nelson Productions, and it will be the single non-short film or play video on that channel. Might as well throw the Noah Nelson Productions channel a bone somewhere in this, shake-up due to my entire channel being deleted. And before we get to the elephant in the room, there is one other major video that's not part of a long-running series that I plan to make. And I intend this video to be the last YouTube video I ever make that is not a short film or a play for Noah Nelson Productions. And this major video is essentially going to be a film that will be used as an overarching finale to all of the lore we've been building up the past couple years. Obviously, if you've been watching the main channel, or this channel, or, hell, even Heart of Pluto Pictures and Noah Nelson Productions to an extent, we've built up a lot of lore connecting everything on the channels. It started with the Pavlin Dobrev character being introduced as what was meant to be a one-off gag on the podcast, but then I slowly developed into an actual character that then became the primary antagonist for the channel for a while. Sort of spawned the idea for Smash Or Day Fight Live, where a lot of the lore came from. Dubbers has its own lore set in its own universe, and now there's going to be another universe that is containing the Stan run dubs and stuff like that. Even Miserable Movie Monday has seen some lore with, Stan running for president and whatnot, and all the shit with Louis, and the Miserable Movie makers, Blake Winchester, who started as a one-off character in Sugarloaf Shade, but then I developed into something more. So this final video that I am slowly working on is going to be a feature-length finale to everything. It's going to tie everything together and be the conclusion to the story that has been largely built up by me along with Alex for the past few years. And I'm so excited for you guys to see what that is going to be. I cannot quite yet reveal the exact nature of this finale, but it will be massive. It will be the biggest YouTube video I've ever made. And it's also already been teased by a recent upload to my main channel, which obviously doesn't exist anymore. But thankfully, it's still on the Hitmon channel and Heart of Pluto Pictures. So you might be able to figure something out with that. And all that leaves is the Miserable Movie Oscars. The final Miserable Movie Oscars. Obviously, this will be taking place before this big finale. Honestly, I don't know what to do with the Miserable Movie Oscars. I mean, Miserable Movie Monday was basically the flagship series of my main channel for a while. It never made sense anywhere else. So, I genuinely don't know what to do with that. Well, until next time, don't have a good day. Have a... What's going on? Do you guys see that? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello, everyone. The name's Louie. It's very tragic what happened to Noah's channel. Very, very tragic. But I'm still here. I've still got Heart of Pluto Pictures, so I guess I could host the Miserable Movie Oscars if Noah isn't up to it. Be sure to vote. We'll have more details soon about when the Miserable Movie Oscars will take place. And if life is a movie, we'll be sure to make it miserable. Feeling miserable yet, Noah? You will soon.